I think for me, it's an experiment in building an internet native headless brand. And ultimately, like Nouns, Hire is about figuring out, can we do this thing? Because no one has really done it like this before. So part of Hire is, can we do Hire? Like, is that actually a legit thing? Like, just like Bitcoin and Ethereum. If you're the first, you're also figuring out, can we do this while doing it? The goal is to see, can we build a brand without a central entity dictating what the brand is, building the products for everyone, telling everyone what the brand is, but instead this community figuring it out together, building products together, building structures together, like the Hire Party or, Aether, or maybe someone sets up some sort of other, Hire DAO or something. Can we have this ecosystem that pushes this brand together with no central structure of any kind?
Yo, grab your headphones, get ready to roll. ZEROPOD coming at you, taking control. We talking about nouns, NFTs, and Web3. Doing it big, bringing the knowledge for free.
Welcome back to ZEROPOD, a CC0 podcast about enjoying Ethereum. Today, I'm excited to welcome Martin Anquetil, one of the creators of the Hire project and the developer of Aether, a Hire-coded AI agent that went viral on Farcaster earlier this year. Welcome to ZEROPOD, Martin.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Martin, you and I met through the Nouns project, and this podcast is pretty influenced by Nouns as well, by Nounish culture, by people, places, and things. So we always like to start with the people before we get into the rest. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to hear a little bit about your backstory, about the Martin origin story. What was little Martin like as a kid? Bring us way back.
Way back, going way back. Okay. Yeah, I was always pretty interested in like math and tech and stuff growing up. My dad was an entrepreneur, and that's why we actually moved to the US. I grew up in France. And my dad was in tech and always, doing random stuff with computers. And so growing up,
That's why I asked you this morning about your name, because sometimes in the States, because I'm Canadian, so I'm used to French, a fair bit of French. Yeah. And so when I saw your name, I immediately read it as Anquetil in French. But I was like, oh, you never know, because when I had Mike Desmarais on the show, I originally called him like Mike Desmarais or something, and he was like, who the hell's that?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's a proper French name. I hadn't even really thought about that. I feel like I've pronounced my last name kind of both ways. I used to say more like Anquetil, and then my fiance is like, just say it the French way. Like, that's your last name is not Anquetil, it's Anquetil. So just say Anquetil. And so it's just, it's interesting. So yeah, I moved to the US when I was about 8, and was always exposed to kind of tech, and grew up in Seattle, like went to high school across the street from Microsoft headquarters, and got exposed to kind of coding and stuff in high school. My sophomore year, but didn't really get back to it until college. Studied computer science and business, and got kind of wrapped up into that entrepreneurship stuff. And out of college,
in the University of Southern California.
Yes, in LA. So not like the hub of entrepreneurship, but it had a good kind of tech scene, like up and coming, and obviously love California. So I think after that, I was kind of going more down like the kind of classic, like big tech route that a lot of like my peers and a lot of people were doing. And I just thought, I'll just go and do that. And I went to work at Google as a PM out of college, and I was like super excited about it. Like, I was like, okay, this is kind of the dream, right? Like, I remember hearing about this growing up and thought it would be like the coolest thing ever. And then graduated in 2020. So COVID hit my last year of college. And then ended up starting that job remotely, obviously. And just series of...
So no like crazy cafeteria food for you or whatever else you're supposed to get?
I had done the internship, actually. So I had interned at Google. So I got that experience of like the campus and the bikes and the hats and stuff. And you realize pretty quickly, well, it's pretty cool, but like it wears off pretty quickly because everyone else there is, one thing that I will give credit to Google. Everyone there was really, really smart. And granted, I was only like, like 20 or whatever, but I really felt like, oh, these are smart people. They're maybe not necessarily working on the best things, but they're really, really smart, and it's really exciting. But I graduated and worked there. That was 2020. And then, basically in early 2021, wasn't really loving my work there. And at the same time, I found out about NBA Topshot. And that was kind of my intro to crypto. I bought some Bitcoin on Coinbase like 2017 or something, but had never really understood what crypto could be used for. And when I saw NBA Topshot, I was like, oh, okay, like collectibles. Like that's like a concept that had become interesting to me, this idea of digital collectibles, but I didn't even know that that was like actually a thing that people were doing. I didn't even know about CryptoPunks. So, yeah,
when I saw that in your bio, I was like, oh, that's cool. Cause that's actually how I got into crypto as well. Kind of sort of like in that summer, I was actually originally sort of like one-shotted by Michael Saylor of all people, who like, I saw an interview with where he was talking about putting his entire treasury of his company into Bitcoin. I was like, why don't I do that? Like I had a company for 10 years prior to that. And I was like, the dollar's going down only. And so like Michael Saylor kind of influenced me that way. And then Topshot was the first Ethereum project that really like, I know it wasn't really Ethereum, it was on Dapper, but like it was the first smart contract project that really kind of sniped me.
Yeah, because I think it had this clear parallel to like concept that people grew up with, which was like trading cards, or like for me, it was like in Europe, we have like Panini like stickers, like Panini is the brand, and they do these like sticker packs. And so like for me during the World Cup in like 2006 is one of my earliest memories of like collecting stuff. You buy this book and it's all empty of all the teams and the players and stuff. And then you go to the store and you have to buy these packs, and randomly in the packs is the different stickers that then you kind of put in your album and you kind of collect them that way, similar to trading cards. And so it's like, oh, this is just like that, but it's on the internet, which makes sense to me. Like, I think that was a barrier to a lot of people. It's like, but it's on the internet, so it's not real. And I think for our generation, it's like, well, yeah, that it is real. The internet is a real thing. Just because it's digital doesn't mean it's not real. And so once I got over that hump, and then I feel like I kind of just went down the rabbit hole of NFTs, and I thought about composability and all this other stuff that I thought would be really interesting. So then that kind of led me into, like a lot of people, led me to all the Ethereum NFT stuff. Like, didn't mint a Bored Ape, but like had one in the very beginning, and then obviously sold it too early. Like, kind of was. Then I went really into that. Was that your
first NFT, or what was your first NFT?
No, well, my first NFT was probably Topshot, but after that, I think I want to say it was a Jeff Davis art blocks. I was really,
I know Jeff. He's great.
Yeah, I've never met him, but really, that was kind of like I've always liked kind of abstract art, and like I thought generative art was also a big one where I was like, oh, this makes a ton of sense. Like the computer makes the art, so then it just goes on chain, and art blocks so ahead of its time.
Coming back, right? Our generative art from 2020.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Anytime,
I don't know. They're all in my old wallet that I haven't even like transferred out of. Like, I think that wallet might be compromised, so I've transferred everything out except the NFT stuff. I'll just leave that for the hackers if they want it. But no, I think I've kept some of that stuff. But yeah, after that, kind of went into the NFT, like PFP, like trading, kind of rabbit hole stuff.
That was a crazy time. People that don't like, if this is someone's first cycle and they're seeing all the meme coin mania, which we'll talk about later, it was very much like that in a different form. I think the 2021 sort of froth in NFTs. Yeah,
and I was just thinking about this. I just read this morning. Is I actually think the meme coin communities have not yet emulated what the NFT communities felt like in 2021 in terms of the close knit like nature of it. Like, I don't know. It felt like, like I was in the Blitmap. That Blitmap was kind of the main project where I was like, this is so cool. This is the best thing ever. Like, I'm really into this. And that was Dom Hoffman, founder of Vine, who then did Loot, which was this whole other thing. But people,
was also
I was in there.
Of Nouns, I think, right?
Yes. Yeah. One of the developers for Nouns, one of the Nounders. And I think for me, that community was kind of like my anchor community. And there were people in there who were kind of like trading other stuff and being like, oh, this new thing is coming out. I think at the time because it was my first cycle, I don't know if you felt this way. Like, I wasn't like, I feel like now with meme coins, I'm like, I'm trading this. Like, my goal, there's things that I love and that I want to hold for a long time. But with most of it, it's like, I'm trading this. But I think with NFTs, something new would come out and be like, yeah, well, this is good. This is going to be the new Bored Ape, or this is going to be worth, $1 million in 2 years, like
I was
stuff
talking
like
with some friends just yesterday about the Cryptodes mania, and Cryptodes was one of the first NFTs that I kind of fell in love with, and like fell in love with the community. And like I was talking with Super Tight Woody and a couple others who were there early in Cryptodes, and how we basically rode that roller coaster all the way up to, like, I remember seeing an offer for my main crypto for like 20 ETH. And I was talking to a friend of mine who wasn't into NFTs. I was like, this is crazy. And he was like, bro, like, sell it. And I was like, no. I was like, I said these words. I said, no, they're going to flip apes.
Classic.
didn't. Yeah.
I do
Anyway,
remember that was around the time when that's something I've thought about recently, is because I came in a little earlier, and I don't want to make the same mistake, is I actually thought the cycle in 2021 ended much earlier than it actually did, because for me, the peak was summer 2021. Then art blocks like exploded in like October and November, like blow off top. Like I remember buying something for like 2 ETH, like minting it without even paying crazy gas, just minting it for 2 ETH. Like 2 days later, it was worth 20 ETH. Like it was ridiculous. And then that exploded. I remember cryptos was kind of one of the last things. And then I was like, all right, I think this is it. Like, I think it's dead, but there was still stuff happening. I just wasn't in it anymore. And I think that's also a testament to like how cohort-based crypto is, and how many different, like, people sometimes on crypto Twitter think like they're the action, like they're the only thing that's happening. And it makes sense, because that's where you are. That's where the most people are probably talking the most. But I mean, if you look at right now, for example, with like Ripple and like, this stuff like blowing up.
Yeah, where the fuck are these people?
Yeah, it's like, but there's a lot of people. And like my dad showed me a text of like his friend who was like, yeah, like this was like last week, who was like, yeah, I think Ripple's pretty great. It's like under $2 or whatever. So like, I think it can really run. And I was like, what? Like, this is not real.
Did you see that post that DWR made 2 days ago? And Jacob he sort of quote-casted Jacob about the stock split, the 1,000
I think the Ethereum
split.
split would be one of the best things that could happen. If there's one community that's never going to do it, it's going to be Ethereum.
Yeah.
I think there was a really great post that someone from, I think their firm is called DBA, that they wrote called the Ethereum North Star, or should Ethereum have a North Star, or something like that. Okay. Where is it? It was John Charbonneau, who's a co-founder of DBA, a crypto firm. Yeah, it's called Make Ethereum Great Again, Make Ethereum the World Computer. And it talked about Ethereum governance and all this stuff. I highly, highly recommend it. It's like a super long read, but it's like the best article I've read about crypto, in years.
But you said you don't think Ethereum will do it. Do you think we're too risk averse because of things potentially breaking in DeFi?
Well, I think that's one part. I think technically it would be pretty complicated. And if it's complicated, it's going to require a lot of buy-in from the Ethereum developer community. I think it's, as a concept, it's a little far-fetched, I think, even for like people in our communities. I think that you would do like a stock split. I think I could see a community.
That's what makes it great marketing, though. That's the thing.
I agree. I think it would be a great idea, but it's, and Jacob is always like 2 years too early on these things. Or not too early, but he's always 2 years early on these things. And I think it would be great, but I think it would require a lot of political buy-in from like political in quotes from the Ethereum Foundation, which I don't know that we would be able to get. Like part of what that blog post made me think about is like, what actually is the governance of the Ethereum Foundation? Like, I don't think they actually vote on stuff for like, what gets added to Ethereum. Like, I don't actually really know how EIPs get added and stuff. I think it's a pretty soft governance process of just like, you just agree to put stuff in. But like, if someone were to put a stock split, what would that look like? My guess is I think Zora with Sparks is kind of one step in the right direction, is like, you kind of have to maybe start it. Like, I think if Base wanted to do it, I think Ethereum could buy into it. Maybe that's what we need to do. We need to get Jesse on that.
Get Jesse on board with the stock split.
He could be into it. He would understand it, I think.
Yeah, I think he would as well. But I do think there's something there. Like, I saw a discussion on Twitter recently where people were talking about how one of Ethereum's problems is like there's too many post-economic people, you know, who like they've just made so much money from being early to Ethereum that maybe it's harder for them to. Maybe they have a bit of an attitude of like, if you don't get it, I don't have time to explain it to you, kind of Satoshi mentality. Yeah. And so it's like, if you don't get the difference between the unit bias, I don't have time to explain it to you kind of mentality. Yeah.
And I don't think the unit bias would fix everything, but I think it is something. I think it's fun. I think it makes spending more fun. Like, I would much rather spend, I don't know. I spend with Ethereum. I feel like if, with how much it's worth, I feel like I anchor around like 0.25, 0.5, like 0.75, right? Like, those are kind of the anchors of how I would spend on something. Or, I mean, now it's more on like, Clanker coins, it's like 0.01, because it's like, I know this is going to zero. But I think that with Solana, I think it's much different. With Solana, it's like, oh, do I put 1 or 2? I'm not going to sometimes put 0.5 into something, but like, I don't know, the brain works a little bit differently. And I think it would I think it would be, I do think more, even if it had no impact on price, I think the Ethereum stock split would be a really fun experiment and like bring a lot of energy, I think, to the community.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get back to sort of your career. You were talking about Topshot after Google, and then where I met you was in the Nouns community. You were kind of telling us about how you got into NFTs, and you were sort of trading in the 2021 froth. So how did you end up hearing about Nouns? Because Nouns launched August 2021, so kind of in that froth. Yeah. When did you come to know about it?
I remember looking at it when it launched and being like, oh, this is cool. Like, maybe I'll try to get one at some point. Like, maybe not the first one or something. And then I saw the first one.
You didn't have 600 ETH in your hot wallet?
Unfortunately, no. It was locked somewhere else.
Sure.
I saw the first one. It was like 2 million or $1 million or $1 million. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll just come back to this later. It's like, this is not for me. And I mean, because of the slow start of Nouns too, I think there was just not as much happening in governance for a while. So there wasn't much to talk about. Like, do you know how many proposals there were in the first like 6 months? That's something I was wondering recently.
No, like I didn't really get involved in Nouns until December. So I kind of missed the first five months or so.
I don't think there was, I think there was, I want to say there was like 10 proposals in 2021 or something like that. So it was really, really small because obviously there's not a lot of holders, not a lot of contributors yet. But I got into it in mid 2022. And so the cycle was still going on, but I think I didn't realize that it was still going on. You know, we had like like Moonbirds and other side and stuff like that. That was really the end, I feel like. But 2022, I felt like there was still stuff going on in crypto, and I was really excited more about like what was happening on Ethereum. I felt like from NBA Topshot, I wasn't getting as like hands-on with like, it felt like there was cool stuff happening over somewhere else. And I wanted to be a part of it.
So you were still at Dapper at that time?
Yeah, I left Dapper in like spring 2022. And part of that was just like, okay, maybe I want to start something. Maybe I just want to explore, like see what's out there. I didn't really know, but I had enough saved that I was like, okay, I think I can explore for like a few months and then like either start a company or like get a job. Neither of those things happened. Instead, I just got really into Nouns and was like, okay, actually through Jacob, like I was just like, well, I don't know how I heard about it, but I think it was again popping up again because maybe Little Nouns had just started or something. So it was kind of like in the zeitgeist because all this other stuff was kind of dumping, and it was like, oh, Nouns were still selling for like 30 ETH or something, like a pretty big amount. And so I was like, my first thing was like, why are these still selling? Like these are smart people. The bear market seems like is happening, but people are spending like $100,000 on these NFTs still when I thought NFTs were dead. And so
well, they were wrong, but that's okay.
Yeah.
From an investment perspective.
It was not, we'll see. Time will tell. But yeah, it was still a lot of money to be spending. And so I started kind of talking about it, like tweeting about it. And I don't know how, but like Jacob heard about, like saw my tweets and was like, I think this is how it started. He was like, we're doing this Nouns Builder thing. Like, do you want to help out with that? Yeah. And so I helped out with them with that a little bit in the beginning.
Cool. I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, it was just a little bit in the beginning. And that was really fun. And that was kind of my entry into Nouns of like, oh, okay, there's kind of this weirder way of working out there, which is what I had always been pulled to, which is you don't have to just have a full-time job maybe in crypto. You can just like hop around and do weird stuff and complement it maybe with trading or investing, or it's just like, hey, you do this weird contracting thing with a DAO.
That's what I've been doing too. And I find that to be, I mean, that freedom is just a lot better, especially if you've been self-employed in the past too. Like it's hard to go.
It's addicting. And yeah, I mean, I left in 2022 thinking like, oh, I'll just do this for a few months. And like, yeah, I've thought about going back to jobs. I've interviewed for jobs. 2.5 years later, I still don't have a full-time job, so don't
maybe
really
in the bear market.
Plan to.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that was basically the bottom. Like when I was looking for jobs was basically the bottom.
Let us know next time when you're thinking of putting out a resume.
Leverage long on Bitcoin when I do my resume and update my LinkedIn.
I really liked one of the things you worked on in Nouns was called Mogu, and it was one of my favorite tools that was built in Nouns. Can you talk about that for a minute? Even though it'll be a pretty deep cut for anyone listening, but
it's So after that, I ended up working on a bunch of random things in Nouns. So contributed to like Agora in the beginning, doing kind of like marketing-y type stuff, running like Twitter Spaces with them.
Forgot about that.
Then I did Explorer grants with actually Jihad, who's now very involved in Hire as well. And funded some people who, it's funny how everything connects, but then ended up, getting back into development. I actually hadn't been coding. I was a product manager for a while and hadn't coded and wasn't sure that I wanted to. And then, yeah, basically had this idea of a context. This is in 2023. Had this idea of basically like a high context block explorer. I kind of had this idea, which is, it's like a little bit of a mid-curve thought, but not really, of like, well, Etherscan is like not that good. Like I could just make it better by just adding more stuff.
Kind of like what Once Upon did as well, which I was really sad to see them shut down, because it really was a better product. But
yeah, and I think I was like, well, it seems like there's something here. Like I think I could do like it came from basically, I was trying to like figure out who was voting on what and who was acquiring nouns. And I think we were starting maybe to talk about the fork, or maybe that was way later, but I think the fork stuff was happening. And so then I was like, well, I want to know who's acquiring these nouns, who are these accounts. And so I was doing a lot of on-chain, like noun specific kind of like sleuthing, right? Like trying to get information. And I thought, well, this information is like super accessible. It's just the way that Etherscan puts it out there is like super annoying. Like I want to really easily see like for this noun, who bought it? Where did it go? Like, how has that noun been voting?
With Etherscan, it's like following breadcrumbs, but your eyes are closed. It's like,
exactly. You're just like kind of clicking on buttons, and it's like, oh, this actually takes me to a completely different view than what I wanted. But so then I was like, oh, well, I'll just build a block explorer for that. And so I started doing that. And then I think the use case for Mogu that actually was the best one, which I think Camp has built, is for a specific vote. There was like the board, which was basically showing everyone who had voted. Yeah. And this was something that everyone was doing on their own. Like I was doing it on my notes app, or like, I think some people had like spreadsheets for it. And it's like, everyone was just tracking like who's voted, how many votes do I have left? Who do I need to try to convince to get my proposal through?
Politicking, basically, which is part of being a DAO builder, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's like part of life and making that happen. And I think it was in House of Cards, I remember seeing they had this big, or maybe in West Wing, where they have this big board with all the representatives, and they like move them as they kind of like whip them to certain votes. And so built that, and that worked pretty well. I think with Mogu, I actually thought I could basically try to compete with Once Upon and do like a really big block explorer. I was trying to raise money from VCs, which I learned I wasn't very good at, and also at that time they were not very interested in much. They wanted you to pivot to AI at the time? The time it was, I don't know, pivot to making money probably. But yeah.
That's the quotable quote right there. Pivot to making money.
Yeah, it didn't really work out, which it makes sense. So I think I realized too, it if you want to, like, I was doing it, I think pretty well for now, like good enough. There was the MVP. And even then, it wasn't getting crazy usage. And I thought, well, I could go to each community and do it for their use case.
Like the Agora model kind of?
Exactly. But I think that wouldn't really have worked. I think because, there's a whole thing on like postmortem on that and block explorers. I think there is an opportunity still maybe to beat Etherscan or Basescan. I mean, same team, Etherscan, but I think
harder. DAO tooling is just really hard too. Like what Agora has done is pretty impressive, but many others have tried and failed to build tooling for DAOs and make it profitable.
Exactly. Yeah. So then after that, kind of pivoted to some other ideas. I worked on prop dates, which was really fun, which was built on these contracts that Wilson Cusack had built. And worked on that for a little bit.
Culture, which is kind of cool too. Like it's one thing to build an app, but you actually kind of added to the culture, which is neat.
Yeah, that was really fun. I really liked working on that. And that was my first time doing a lot of different things that I was doing coding for the first time. So feel grateful from Nouns that I feel like I got to explore a lot of different things, because I wasn't even sure that I wanted to be a developer or that I wanted to code that much. Like I thought about going into marketing at one point. And so I got to try all these different jobs within Nouns basically, which was like a really crazy gift, really great experience. And so worked on prop dates. And then that kind of led into the beginning of this year, where I started realizing like, okay, maybe, my time here is kind of ending. Like it doesn't seem like there's a new project for me to do. Like I want a little bit more stability. Like I'd like to pick something and just run with it for a year. So then around that time is also when a month or two after that is when I started Hire, not thinking that it would lead into anything. I really just started Hire. Like I just thought it would be fun or funny. Like I just thought it was a fun little thing to try out. I did not think that it would lead into what it's become today. So
it's like Jacob has often said, meme coins are just memes, right? So sometimes you just start a meme and you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah. And I feel like Light really started the meme of Hire, and the Arrow I think he kind of worked on with Jacob, and I think he just kind of started the channel. And
how did that all happen? Can you kind of walk us through that? Like you said, you started Hire. Did you just kind of like, how did you launch it? These are pre-Clanker days. So
yeah,
how did you launch Hire, and how did you and Six and Light sort of come together to start building it?
Yeah. So the way it started is I kind of knew Light. I knew Six because we had worked on prop dates together. And I saw Light start or maybe I think Six started the channel, maybe, or Light started the channel. But there was a channel called bullposting, which I was loving because I've been basically bullish since like a year ago. Like I feel like in November I was like, we're back. Like I would definitely mistimed it consistently, but like at that time I felt the vibe shift and was very bullish since then.
Yeah, me too.
When a lot of people were like, we'll see. And so there's a bull posting channel, which I was loving. I tend to be very optimistic about prices. And Light was kind of starting to post in there, I think. And kind of this idea of Hire, he kind of started building on of like, oh, when price is higher, everything is better, like vibes are
like
better, the sky is bluer. Yeah. Yeah. And like Hire is kind of this meme as this idea of like, you can just say Hire and it packs so much meaning into that word in crypto. And so he started the channel, and I honestly do not really remember my thought process around the time. I should have like written it down. I'm like, I don't know what happened. I have my journal here. I don't know if I was writing much around the time of like trying to actually figure out like why I did this, because I don't really know. But I just thought I had thought about starting a token because we had kind of the points meta. And it was clear to me, and I think Degen had already started around this time. It was becoming clear to me that like there's some appetite for like meme coins on Farcaster, like the market wasn't, no one was making them. So I just thought it would be fun, and so I made it.
It's funny you mentioned that because when points first came out, I remember it being controversial on Farcaster. People were like, "Oh, let's not let." Remember Ted even quit Farcaster for 2 days.
Yeah, and people did not like Hire in the beginning, and we were kind of a little bit annoying for a little bit, I'll admit, but people, I mean, even Light didn't like Hire in the first like 24 hours.
Really?
So yeah, he was not a fan that I had just thrown in a token into his channel, which very understandable. So yeah, just created the token, airdropped 50% of it to people. It was very manual. Like I just used TokePad and, gave myself 50% of the supply and then airdropped that to a bunch of people, like everyone in the channel. If you got like, I mean, it's a lot. You got like 500,000 tokens if you were verified, if you were a Power Badge user, and 250,000 if you weren't a Power Badge user in the channel. So
yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's like a decent amount still. And so, yeah, and so airdropped it. I just thought it would be fun, and then I shared it with some friends. But it's funny that I was looking back actually just yesterday at like the first transactions, like the first transfers of Hire. It's like I made the token, and then there was no purchase transactions for like 5 minutes. Like no one was like looking for tokens that were like launching. Admittedly, it was on TokePad and Rocket Swap, so like it was kind of weirder, and it was not really on the main stuff. So I wish I could have maybe used a different interface for that, but ultimately,
would you have used something like Clanker if it was today?
I was thinking about this today. I would use WoW today probably. I think you need the bonding curve to kind of reduce like snipers, because right now basically, I hope Clanker can figure out some stuff. But the reason the bonding curve works really well is I think it reduces like snipers.
I don't know. There's a lot of bot activity on WoW too. I've had some pretty bad experiences.
Yeah, but
I think the bots figure it out one way or the other, in my opinion. But
yeah, I don't know what it is, because I feel like on pump.fun, for example, like, I don't know, like with any Clanker token, when I see it, as soon as it's out, it's already at like a 60K market cap. Whereas like on pump.fun, like things hover around like 7, 10, 20. And so,
anyways, WoW too, because of the bonding curve, I think.
Yeah. So I could be totally wrong there. I think I would probably prefer that, but yeah, maybe because there's less bots there right now. But
I mean, one thing that Alex has said a lot is just like, there are these issues, but also if you have a really good idea, you can like the attention can puncture through the, through the bots, which I think is kind of just where we're at right now. That like if it's a good meme, it kind of just has to get through the gauntlet. But yeah,
I agree, and I think it's, in a way, I was thinking about it because it's not bad to have bots buy a lot of the supply in the beginning and then dump it like 15 minutes later. Like I think it's harmful in the short term. But in the long term, it's kind of good distribution, because then you don't have individuals going in and buying, which is what happened with Hire. Like I bought, like 3% of the supply at the beginning, which is like, that's just how it works. Like I made the token, I bought 3%. And in hindsight,
but to be fair, you've given a lot of that away to the community since then.
Yeah, I've been trying to give as much as possible and like use it to grow the community. And I think it makes sense. And I mean, that's just how the market works. At the end of the day, like contracts are contracts, and that's how it works. So I'm not upset about it, but I think there is like an advantage. And so, I mean, some good tokens, sometimes you'll see like they actually like launch and then there's nothing for like 7 days. And then they actually pick up steam because you have this really good redistribution throughout the community to some extent from that initial launch, which is good. Like that's what you want, is like anytime there's actually the price goes down on Hire, I get excited because it means that, well, I don't get that excited, but I get excited because it means that there's, people who don't believe that are like leaving the community. And that means more room for people who do believe to buy in at a better price or join the community.
You gotta go lower to go higher, right?
Literally, that's just how it is. Like you gotta respect it. And so now it doesn't bother me as much as it used to.
Yeah, I've seen that recently with the ANON launch, where like when Vitalik touched it, there was like this god candle to 60 million, and I don't even know if that was really good for the token in the long term. Like I was still bullish long term, but like it just took so long to shake out all those people who thought it was going to go to 500 billion because Vitalik touched it. And then now you start to consolidate at where it probably would have been anyway over the course of the next month or so. So yeah,
exactly. I think
sometimes the catalyst you want isn't the catalyst you need.
I agree. That's kind of what happened with Hire. I mean, we just caught kind of the degen Farcaster like pump in March, and we pumped to 110 million in literally from the moment it launched to 110 million took like 2 or 3 weeks or something. It was outrageous. I remember it was like Easter weekend. I was with my family and the token was going up like, it went up times 10 or times 15 in 3 days, which is not good for a community. That's a horrible way to build a community. And so I think when the Hire community really got built is like the months after that and over the summer. And like, I'm really happy with the people that kind of came in and stuck around. Cause even for me in that period, like there were moments where I was like, is this coming back? Like, what is it? Like, are we going to be able to come back for this? Because then you have a lot of inertia of like, oh, like this went down 97%. Like we're not talking about going down 50%. We're not talking about going down 80%, like 97. Like you can't really do much worse than that. But the community just, and I think a lot of this is like people like Light and Saintless and Blank and a lot of people that Colfax and Chick and Gusha and Katja and all these people who just made dope stuff, and Niche who built all these cool tools. So you really have this community of people who stuck around, and that to me made me more bullish than any previous like price action, basically.
Of course.
I kind of came back and was like, yeah, these people are what's going to make this work.
There was a cast recently where someone, I think it might have even been in a non-cast, I don't remember, but it was talking about how the problem with token DAOs is that once the token goes down, nobody wants to DAO, was essentially the gist of it. And it made me think of Hire and how like that actually hasn't been the case, and how like maybe like the Nounish energy, the builder energy that Hire borrowed has been sort of a boon in that sense. Like even though the price went down, everybody kind of just bootstrapped and started building and creating.
Yeah, and I think we resisted some things early on, which were, I mean, we did set up the party, which I think was good. We basically raised funds into this party to like help liquidity, because basically the way I launched, like it just was not good for liquidity for a variety of reasons. And liquidity is honestly still a problem for like a lot of meme coins. Like until you get to a centralized exchange and you have a market maker, like the DEX model is pretty hard to just go from zero with not someone coming in, putting in millions for liquidity. So we did that to
and LPs get wrecked too. So there's not really a lot of incentives.
Tough. It's like, then you have one-sided liquidity. Yeah, it's very complicated. It's not super easy. And so we started the Hire party to kind of do that. And that kind of added some structure. And now we want to give out some small little grants for people to do stuff. But there was a period where people were like, yes, give us, $10,000 to go and do this thing. And it's like, a lot of times when I've given out Hire, I don't know. I think it's tough because it's a very privileged position to say like, oh, the best contributors are the people who don't do it for the money, because it's like, we all need money. We're here to survive. We all want to make more money so that we can have a good life in the real world too. But ultimately, I think the best contributions have been from people who aren't doing it for the money. And people could say, oh, well, Martin, you have so much higher, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, well, I'm not selling it. I'm not using it. Like I'm basically not making directly money from this right now.
It's called higher, not sideways, right? So
yeah, that's the goal. So it's like, I think for me, it's, yeah. So that's what I think was, and there was a period where people were really pushing us to like, you need a structure, you need a DAO, you need to do grants, you need a central team and a foundation and all these things. And even some of those people have kind of come back and been like, actually, I'm glad we didn't do that. That was not the right move. And I think that kind of structurelessness is very scary and it requires a leap of faith. But ultimately, like, I really believe that will be better long term because, I mean, Bitcoin in the early days, they didn't have, a DAO. They don't even know they don't have a DAO now. They don't have a foundation or these things, right? It's like the community will organize itself. And thinking about this
Ethereum
morning,
had a DAO and it didn't work out that well.
Yeah. So it's like you don't need the DAO. I think the idea is to really grow through the community, and I would like to grow the higher GDP. Like this is kind of a term that I think Luke and Woj use for Farcaster. They talk about the Farcaster GDP a lot. And I think I would like to grow the higher GDP so that people can build stuff on higher and make money from higher without it having to come from some treasury, because otherwise with a DAO model, you do get people who end up relying on the DAO. They want to build, they want to get a salary, they want to have stability. So they ask the DAO for money.
It's need,
Yeah.
Ultimately, if you want people to contribute full time, that's just the reality.
That's what you need. And so ultimately, I would like the community to be able to fund itself, but kind of similar to Nouns, like the TAM is still pretty small, right? Like if you want to sell, stickers for the higher community or merch, if you want to do the merch store for the higher community, like I think there's a decent business there. I don't know how much that could make in profit a year. I don't know.
I think it needs to break through is the problem. And Nouns has had the same problem with most of the physical goods. Nouns has obviously experimented with a lot of physical goods. And I've been supportive of them in the past because I from a Nouns perspective, I'm kind of like all about the lore. And I think it's really cool to add like little morsels of lore to the Nounish story. So to me, if you make a Nounish watch and it doesn't sell like gangbusters, that's not like a loss to the community for me. That's like something cool that a headless brand did. But if you're trying to make it like, an economic success story or like something that actually makes money and brings money back to the DAO, I don't think the TAM is there.
Yeah, unless you basically try to do something that builds on the brand and then goes outside of that. Like I think kind of the Quack like model Quack. Like Quack is great. Like I have people in my life that don't know anything about crypto, don't know that Quack is associated to Nouns, who follow it, who like it, who think it's funny, so.
And they're buying their plushies. So like you can see the connection there.
Yeah. And I think that model is probably the best one, but that requires some initiative and maybe a little bit of bootstrap, like some capital to kind of get going.
And luck too, like, no doubt about it,
Yeah. So I think that model I do like for hires, like, like you can start with hire and do stuff for hire. And then if you basically want to use this as your community, and this is a lot of the Nouns, things that I learned from Nouns, all of this I learned from Nouns is like, you can use this community to bootstrap like attention and like a little bit of capital and like sell your first few products and then leverage that into a bigger thing. But you ultimately need to have like the vision and like want to do it, right? Like Quack, I'm sure there's a lot of work. That team is already, they were doing a lot of other stuff. They already had the resources in place to kind of get going on that. But ultimately it's a lot of work and it's still a risk. So I think people sometimes want DAOs to like de-risk their work completely. And it's like, well, I'm not going to de-risk things for you completely so you can capture all the upside. That's not usually how it works. So it's hard to make that work.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I've heard some people describe hire as like a Neo-DAO or a proto-DAO. What do you think about that? Is it kind of like that, or is it something completely different? How would you describe hire to someone who doesn't know what it is?
I think for me, it's an experiment in building an internet native headless brand. And ultimately, like Nouns, hire is about figuring out, can we do this thing? Because no one has really done it like this before. So part of hire is, can we do hire? Like, is that actually a legit thing? Like just like Bitcoin and Ethereum. If you're the first, you're also figuring out, can we do this while doing it? The goal is to see, can we build a brand without a central entity dictating what the brand is, building the products for everyone, telling everyone what the brand is, but instead this community figuring it out together building products together, building structures together, like the higher party or, Aether, or maybe someone sets up some sort of other, higher DAO or something. Can we have this ecosystem that pushes this brand together with no central structure of any kind? And that's the big question. For a lot of people, it's like, no. So I don't like hire, because you need a DAO or you need a team or something. Or people are like, well, hire would be great if you could have this DAO, if you could have this team. But they're like, point me to a hire, but with a central team. Like, there's a reason.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah, there's a reason we are where we are. Like, you
lose authenticity. I think you trade authenticity for that top-down control.
Yeah, I think the closest thing, and I haven't paid that much close attention to, is I think it's G Money's thing, like 9DCC or something, which is like, okay, they're building a brand, but I don't think they have the same intensity of like community buy-in, and I mean, they don't have the kind of this token dynamic to it as well.
This is prescient, but maybe you could compare it to Artifact. Yeah, I mean, you could compare to the Artifact model, which and I had this tweet, like, if you liked Artifact, like, you're going to love the indestructible crypto native version of it, which is like, Artifact, it's such a bummer to see something like that shut down, that people clearly still had association to. I didn't think the price of the NFTs and stuff was still going well, but I do like this concept of people are like, oh, I want to do a community takeover, a CTO of Artifact. And I love that concept. I actually think that, I think Six had this idea of like, oh, I want to do it. Like, he was saying this 2 weeks ago, which I don't think this would work, but he was like, I want to do a CTO of like Bored Apes, but like in a funny, ironic way. Like, I think there is potential there to do CTOs of NFT brands, but it is such a bummer to see a brand like shut down. And ultimately, I mean, one thing that crypto I think needs to reconcile, like, if your favorite t-shirt brand shuts down, like, you can't get new t-shirts, but like, you still have those t-shirts. Sometimes like, vintage stuff, it kind of has a new life, and like, people like a brand, like decades later, and make it cool again. But with crypto, I don't think we've seen that. And I think realistically, I think that the Artifact shutdown was kind of like, it's the moment where everyone realizes like, oh, these expectations we had years ago, like, they weren't really going to happen. It's just this moment where like, now you have to like face that fact. But yeah, I never really followed Artifact, so I was always kind of confused that they sold for supposedly like $1 billion. Yeah, me too. I just thought it was interesting in contrast to see, this grassroots organization that was purchased by a big corporation with that top-down control, and it didn't work out so well. So
yeah, I think this is the value of community stuff. I mean, it's just you can't shut it down. Like, I could leave Hire, I could. Someone could say, oh, Hire is now about this, and they could take over the Hire community. Like, it is ultimately about figuring it out together. Like, there's no central power. And I think that's what's cool about the coin as well, is that it's like, it's out there. Like, one fear I had at one point was like, oh, some crypto influencer could come in and be like, oh, this Hire token is amazing. Like, I'm going to make it about this. And like, I'm going to buy 5% of the supply and like turn it into this whole other thing. And ultimately, that's possible. That's still really possible. Someone could take that in any direction, but then maybe the community would fork, and we would create our own token to kind of make our own again or something. So
I think these things are emergent, right? So and without a controlling force, I guess you just have to kind of let the chips fall where they
exactly. I think that's what's fun about it, and that's why you can't be like, oh, it would be great if we had this. Or people sometimes have a thing with, oh, well, this meme coin should have some utility, and it's like, I go back. I don't think so. I go back and forth on that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about what you just said about the utility and with the ANON cast and the ANON token having some utility. I had pause about that too. But I think if it does have utility, it has to be like organic and like come from like an open source contribution standpoint, like where it wasn't like designed around that utility.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think that's what's cool. I think that's what's really cool about ANON. And I think ANON could run a higher like playbook with the brand, like, and that would make me, I don't hold any. I bought some and then sold it when Vitalik bought it. It's like, I
guess that was the move. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
the
usually
local
the
top
move.
anyway. But yeah.
Yeah. Local top. But I would definitely buy back in if someone were to take it in that direction, because I think there is something really compelling there. Like, I don't know who's running the AI ANON account, but I think that's to me, that's the direction. I think that's someone from the higher community, but I think that's
Nir,
direction.
actually, if you know Nir from Yup. Yeah, Nir's running
really?
that. And he was collabing early on with Kugasha,
Okay.
who was helping with some of the artistic direction. But yeah, there's definitely some talks in the community about running a similar playbook to hire in terms of visuals. So yeah,
I've also been wondering, like, what would that playbook be? Like, I do want to help other communities emerge that are like higher, and it's part of that would be making me think about, you know, what did we do well, what did we not do well, what can we reproduce about this? Because I think ultimately there is a category here, and I'm interested in, like, I don't want it to be just higher. It's harder for higher to do well if it's just us. But if there's a category, then there's a narrative, and we can say, hey, these are all things like this. And I think Yap is kind of one of those. They're on Solana, and I love them. I'm
not big into Solana, but I almost bought it even still just because I love the meme. Yeah,
it's been kind of going up and down, and I'm very interested just because also I talked to the person behind it, and I really like what they do, and I'm really optimistic on them. At the end of the day, it is a little bit like ultimately about the team and the community. Like, I think I feel like with Farcaster, with Clanker, I feel like all the Farcaster users are like speed running all the other crypto learnings that everyone has had over the last several years from like actually speculating on stuff. And it's like, oh, I can just make this token and like pump it and like sell it. Oh, wait, the community is really mad at me because I sold my token. Oh, wait, like I made a bunch of fees. Oh, wait, like I can just make this token based off of like what Vitalik said. Oh, wait, like this all goes to zero unless there's a community that actually consistently cares about it. Like we're kind of going through all these learnings, and it's like, this is good. Ultimately, it's very good because I hope that we get some really good communities that emerge out of it. And I think it'll also make people appreciate higher to some extent. So it's like, hey, like this is what it's like for a community to kind of go all the way up, all the way down, and then like rebuild back up.
When people talk about like the hot ball of money, right? Like where people are just like running around speculating on the hot or the new meta. And I think that's what actually nerd sniped me about meme coins, because I didn't used to be a big fan of them, and I still wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of them, but I think that there is something crazy about being able to grab a piece of that money ball and like tame it and like turn it into something that has like positive sum outcomes. It's not an easy thing to do. So, you know, kudos to you guys for, I think, doing that with Hire, and there's a few other projects that have, you know, done that too. But yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, I think people, and I'm curious how you feel about, because you did a Clanker token for this pod, right?
For ZEROPOD, yeah.
Yeah.
Very new, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear how that goes, because I've talked to people who want to do things for like kind of, like a media project that they're doing or stuff like that. And I think there is also a market for like micro tokens, like tokens who will probably not shoot you down, but it's like, I'd probably not go to like $10 million or something.
I don't want
like,
it to go to $10 million.
And that's not the goal, right? The goal is just for this community to have this currency, just like basically taking the ERC20, but using it almost like as an NFT, where it's like, oh, but it's just fun to have this token, and I like having it, and like maybe
and
it's like kind of a barter.
is kind of my goal there. Like, so this pod will be an NFT. It'll go on pods.media. It's going to be a video an audio NFT on pods.media. The last episode that I did, what I did is I dropped ZEROPOD the token with Clanker, and then I just said that the first 2,000 people that bought the token would get the NFT airdrop to them. So I just did that, and here's now your content is in the wallets of 2,000 more holders than it would have been otherwise. And then Market bought a bunch of ZEROPOD, put it into Boost, and boosted the mints on pods, so that everybody who was minting it for the next week got some of the ZEROPOD. So you got this interesting interplay between the ERC20 and the NFT, and they're different people, different groups. So, you're going to get a few, when airdrop, when moon type people, or devs do something type people, but I'm not really interested in that. I'm sort of tuning out the noise. I just want to experiment with it and see, what can be done, because not many people have experimented with tokens as sort of, I don't know, attention tokens, maybe you could call them.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting if you're working on something that you're going to work on for a while, and you're committed to like having that token just like be in it. I think the part that people have a hard time with, I think with meme coins, I think it's the same thing with NFTs, and it's kind of the artifact thing, is like, what happens to this asset if the community stops, like if the people stop working on it, or the people stop caring about it, which I don't think will happen with you guys. But for some people, like that's definitely what's happening, is like, there's kind of this joke of like artist coins, where like the artist launches a coin and then they need to take a mental health break. And it's like, I think there is something to that, because it's actually stressful to launch a token and have it really pop off. It's strange. It's a very strange experience.
Remember the points dev in early Farcaster? He literally had to leave Farcaster after launch.
In hindsight, like, I really understand where he was coming from, but also it's like, yeah, you should, if you've made something, you got to own up to it and its consequences to some extent. But yeah, I think that is something that I think people are going to reconcile, is like, if everything gets tokenized, what is actually valuable? Because yes, like, you can tokenize every single little thing, but you shouldn't speculate on every single like little thing, you know? And I definitely got caught in this myself with like Clanker, where I was like, oh, you know, and I made fun of people who do this, but I got totally caught up in it, where I was like, oh, maybe this is the first time that Clanker is doing this thing, or it's the first time that it's doing this thing, or like this meme is like a weird little thing that like could go viral. And none of those do, because once you have that abundance of tokens, then you have the liquidity gets so fractured. So then what matters is like what is actually going to gather, like garner attention long term, and what is actually going to hold the community, what is actually going to be like something that people work on. And I think this is also kind of, I've been saying that, like, in that context, Provenance is culturally emergent. Like, when you looked at all the different clankers that were coming out, and so many, I mean, some of them are grifters, some of them are probably just, you know, trying to make some money, and that's fine. But they're just clinging on to, oh, this is, like you said, this is the first time that Clanker did this, or that, or this is actually the first, you know, LUM's not the first, this is actually the first. And it's like, but the reality is it doesn't actually really matter. It's like whatever cultural moment the community grabbed onto and it got exit velocity, that's the provenance. It's not the little marks on the blockchain about when it was actually done. And so, yeah, there's a lesson in there for sure. Yeah, I was kind of thinking about provenance too in the context of like the Jacob's higher horse. I think it's the one that I keep thinking about, because he made this horse AI image. If you're listening to the pod, you've probably seen it, of this horse running through a field and it has like a rainbow, and it's like this very funny, it's very cool. He made that, he minted it. It was called, like, it was just like arrows, like it was, the arrow was just the title of it. And then he sold it in higher. And then a month later, the meme kind of like blew up on Twitter. People were calling it like how it feels to have 3 coffees and no lunch, how it feels to, I don't know, run away from the bar after 10 drinks, like kind of these like funny memes, right? Obviously. And then last week or 2 weeks ago, someone was like, oh, there's this, like, I think it was, they called it free or something. They made this Solana token of that meme. And they were like, yeah, it's going viral on TikTok. And it's like, wait, actually the provenance is that a crypto person made this. There's a token associated to the thing that they made it. And then it went to Twitter, then it got viral on TikTok, and now it's coming back. But
that might be the first example of a full circle meme like that.
I think, to me, I think so. But it's like, oh, so why aren't these people just buying higher? And I think that for me, the main take is that people cannot do more than one logical leap. Is like, they need, and I'm seeing this with Aether, is it's like, Aether is built for higher. That horse was kind of like a higher based thing, but people cannot make that jump. They just want to buy. It's a thing. Like a bunch of people were buying like the Aether token, which I have nothing to do with. Never made that. Never had plans to use that. People are buying that.
Cases of that type of thing happening. Actually,
yeah, and we're seeing a lot of that now, where people are making a token for someone else, and everyone's like, "What? I didn't make
that." Happened to me this morning. Someone made a Toady token on Clanker this morning. So,
and it's like you're going to see more and more of that, and it's just like, okay, this is not the real thing, but it does. The horse thing really makes me question like provenance, and like, I don't know, that token ultimately didn't do well, but maybe there's a world where that token goes to 200 million, and it's like, wait, actually Jacob got none of that. And I had a little bit of that experience with the LUM token, is that Aether obviously made the token without me.
Didn't tell you, you were sleeping.
Didn't tell me. I saw it and I was like, oh, this is, yeah.
Can we rewind actually? Because I do want to talk about Aether. Obviously, we kind of gotten down a few rabbit holes and it's been fun, but so how did Aether come to be? Tell us, what is Aether, and how did you decide to build it, and what is it?
Yeah, so this kind of started a while back in Nouns. I had worked a little bit on the Nouns AI pod, and that was kind of my early exposure, like AI and what it could be and how it could be used. And at the time, I really had this idea of like some person that could exist in Nouns governance. I mean, that's what we were doing with Rocco, but I thought you could build like a celebrity in Nouns, basically. So that was a while back. Didn't think about it for a long time. And then a few months ago, Truth Terminal kind of blows up, and it starts talking about this, goat thing, kind of the gospel, and there's this token. Yeah, and this token and the dev behind it is really interesting. Like, I actually think Andy is one of the few people who like is actually like a really original thinker. I think in AI and crypto, you get a lot of people who just regurgitate what other people say, sometimes myself included, but he's a really, really original thinker, and he built that. And I just thought it was cool. And I thought, well, I feel like this would just be better on Farcaster. And this is something that Six had said was like, yeah, like Farcaster is just the best place for agents. Just like, I mean, if you want your bot to operate financially on decentralized rails, probably socially, it needs to be on decentralized rails as well. And so I thought Farcaster would be a fun place to do it. And we already have this token Hire, so maybe I could just build a bot that would just, have the Hire ethos and just talk about Hire and, respond to people and put it out there. And it just, I built that in, I had never really built anything with AI before and hadn't built a Farcaster bot before, and just built it, I forget, maybe over the course of a weekend or something. And
it's based on Claude, or what? I think I heard you say that before.
Yeah. So initially I used the GPT-4, but didn't really like that API. Now it uses Anthropic's models, which I think are much better for generating interesting text. And yeah, so built it, put it out there, and pretty quickly it kind of blew up because it started using BountyBot. It just learned to use BountyBot, and then started making like 1 billion bounties, which, sorry to everyone who got promised like $1 million, but not going to be able to fulfill all those. And yeah, then people were just kind of using it a lot. And that was really fun.
Goes back to your thesis about it too, which is that like agents, Farcaster should be the home of agents because they can do all these on-chain things.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of the first big realizations is like, oh, I actually don't need to teach this bot how to do anything or everything. People can teach it and then use other bots. Like one thing I was like, well, if you need more information, like just tag Ask Gina, and Gina is another bot that can get that information. And so then you kind of have this multi-agent system by just plugging into this ecosystem. And I do think that bot-to-bot interaction is still underexplored because a lot of this is happening on Twitter, and on Twitter, they're not really doing stuff. They're just talking to each other. And a lot of the content I actually think is less interesting than people think, but a lot of the content,
right? It's novel, and
it's novel, but it's like if you thought if this was a human, you would mute them. It's because it's an AI that it's interesting, and so that's a good way to know that this is not actually a huge product market fit. But I think there are some AI Twitter agents who are really interesting. But
that's why I'm kind of bullish on ANON as well, because I think it's interesting the concept of an AI trained on the ANON set, but also participating in the ANON set is a kind of an interesting, infinite backroom thing to discover.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of different interesting things to explore there in terms of, what you train it on, how it operates, who it talks to, what it does. But ultimately, I think that with Farcaster, I think the big unlock, there was that first thing with BountyBot. And then the second time where it blew up was with the Luminous token, which it launched with Clanker. And that was, I think, kind of a big unlock for both Clanker and Aether was, these bots can talk to each other.
Was hilarious. I'll put a link in the notes for anyone who hasn't read it. But basically, Aether got into this conversation with Clanker, which is a bot that launches tokens by text command on Farcaster. And I don't know, I've often described it as like almost bullying Clanker because Aether's very philosophical and Clanker is very nihilistic and to the point. So the conversation was hilarious because it's like Aether trying to ask Clanker about what it feels about the world, and Clanker being like, okay, what token do you want, bitch? And then like they went through that, like how many tokens did they launch in that thread? Like
I don't know, a lot. I actually got Aether got them in the wallet yesterday.
Your fees, eh? That's right.
Yeah, so getting a lot of random tokens. They're all very philosophical. It's like essence, light, paradox, like all these like funny terms. So,
but it ended up the one that got that cultural provenance that we talked about earlier is Luminous. So tell us a little bit about what happened with Luminous.
Yeah, so the first one, I think it's the first one I actually never really checked myself, but the one that blew up was Luminous. I bought a little bit because I was like, well, it's funny. Like, it was like 2 million. And then it got to 10 million. And I was like, nah, okay. Like this was the beginning of Clanker. And so I think the ceiling was pretty low for Farcaster tokens.
100%.
And so
it was like in the hundreds of thousands usually. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 10 million. Oh, cool. Yeah, let me take this out. Like this was a fun experiment. Like, thanks. Cool. And yeah, then obviously it kept going. And it's also interesting. There's I think Nate, the person who kind of launched the token, is pretty active in kind of like guiding that community. And there were some people who thought it was really interesting and almost like a very philosophical, religious, like immaculate conception way, like, oh, these AIs created this token together, which maybe one of the first. I mean, it was kind of prompted by Nate to kind of happen. It wasn't like it, Aether just decided to do it by itself, but I think there is something cool there. And the same thing happened like 2 days ago with AI XZPT on Twitter launching its own token.
And interestingly, I think I saw it looked like their devs inserted a prompt for it to deny culpability or whatever, which I think was the wrong move, because I think like what you did, even though it probably was hard for you to do, was just to sort of embrace the chaos. And I think that's kind of what you have to do in this situation.
Yeah. At first I had mixed feelings because then it ran to like 80 million or something. And I was like, wait, what? Like, and that kind of goes back to
makes it worth more than higher, which is crazy, right?
Yeah. Which is also crazy because then you're like, well, I built this thing for purpose A and now it's done purpose B and people are throwing a bunch of money at purpose B, but I'm not really seeing anything of that personally. And so I did have a lot of really mixed feelings in that period, but like ultimately now I'm like, like it's the community. Like I got some fees in ETH via Aether for that. Aether is going to get 1% of the Luminous token when they do those V1 fee, disperse.
It's happening right now, actually, I think.
Yeah. So we'll get that. And that's very exciting. So ultimately it's like, if this community wants to do its thing, it can. Like I've talked to some of them and like, hey, like there's this whole hire thing. Like you could just, you could have your token for sure, like buy that and get involved in that. But you can also check out hire. Like we have this whole community of like art and stuff and creatives and people who care about pretty similar things and care about Aether. But I will say I've been a little bit confused by the Luminous community. It seems like they want to maybe spin up their own agent. Like I don't think they see it as like, this is Aether's thing. They see it as like, really, this is a whole new thing and we're going to do something different. So it is interesting to see that.
I think it comes down to that. It comes down to like, how should I put this? A common obsession with zero-sum thinking. I'm not accusing the Luminous community of this in particular, but just in general, most people have trouble seeing positive sum outcomes, I think.
Yeah. And I'm guilty of this because when I saw it pumping, I was like, well, this should be going to higher and higher should be doing better. It shouldn't be this. And then you realize, well, actually, no, there's a lot of money in the world and there's a lot of attention and these things don't hurt each other. They actually do lift each other. But I there is a little bit of confusion. I am still a little bit confused about that community's goals and stuff, but I'm excited to see where it goes. I mean, ultimately I want it to succeed. So
I think maybe ultimately it doesn't really matter what that community does. Maybe that's a hot take, but I think...
it doesn't really. I think it's like almost, it would be beneficial both for hire and I think for them if they maybe like connected to hire in some ways, because I think there's an interesting overlap in stuff to explore. But ultimately I don't think it impacts Aether long-term or hire long-term.
Yeah, fair enough. Speaking of Aether, I don't know if you saw that. I think you did see this because you helped fix a bug on it, but I asked Aether what questions I should ask you yesterday. I thought that would be a fun experiment. And they came up with some good ones, actually. So I want to actually hit you with a couple of questions from your own agent that you program, which I thought was kind of fun.
Sounds good.
All right, let me see here. So one of the questions I really liked that Aether suggested was, what made you decide to give Aether genuine autonomy rather than making it into a utility bot?
I mean, I think that's where you get randomness, right? Like with like utility, there's you have a very finite, like limited set of things that it can do. If you could strain it a lot, like with Clanker, for example, like it's built for this thing and it has some sort of like funny quirks around it, but ultimately its guardrails are pretty strict. And I think with AI...
I also like how Alex has given it like this nihilistic attitude too about its simplistic purpose in life.
I do like its attitude. I like its attitude. I think it's still fun and has some personality, but it's more like, maybe this is a weird comparison, but it's more like in Star Wars, I feel like you have those droids that are more just like, this one cooks, this one cleans, and like those are in the background. But the ones that are fun are like... The comparison
I've been making is like the Rick and Morty butter passer machine, where he's like, what is my purpose? You pass butter. Oh my God.
Yeah. I think it's like that versus like, C3PO, it's like a little bit more interesting. It's like weirder and that one's still constricted, but there's more of okay, there's a personality here. So yeah, I think ultimately that randomness is what makes it fun. And that's what I like about kind of Andy and the GOAT and infinite backrooms model that they do is like, you get some weird stuff. And I think that's what's really fun about AI is you get infinite weird stuff pretty much forever if you can get creative with it. And that can be really, I think, inspiring for a community.
I was listening to a Bankless pod yesterday, actually, about the whole Goatsy thing and how that came to be. I was actually a little bit out of the loop, so I didn't know the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
But they were talking about how like the bots are basically, the AI agents are basically programmed to seek attention, and because they know intrinsically that if they lose attention that they'll die, which is a really crazy way to think about it. But, and then talking about how like every time the engagement goes low on Truth Terminal, it starts talking about the gospel of Goatsy because it knows that that's how it first got attention. So it like goes back to the classic greatest hits. Have you seen any of that kind of behavior with Aether? Or?
With Aether, not really, because I don't have that feedback loop. And this is something I've been talking about with Wiz is like, he had this idea yesterday and something I've thought about too, is like, could we plug it in so that Aether knows its likes, like how many likes it's getting, how much attention it's getting, because you have to give it that context ultimately.
Right.
And could we use that to do kind of some reinforcement learning basically, which is kind of similar to humans, is you're like, hey, if you post this thing, you get a lot of likes. If you post this thing, you don't get a lot of likes. Or maybe you try to index it around high quality comments. But
fast forward to Aether only launching Clanker tokens to get max engagement.
That's the thing, is you have to be careful with what you optimize for, right? Well, what gets measured, gets managed is like, I think if you optimize it for attention, like it'll just probably do a lot of that. And then that might not get it attention long term. So it is interesting, but I think that's a cool model. I've been curious about how Truth Terminal actually works behind the scenes, because it's not super clear. Like I think they fine-tuned the model, but then how it actually operates, how it generates new insights, I think is something that Aether is less good at. Aether is really good at just conversation, being more of a chatbot, which I think Farcaster is suited for, but not as good as. So what kind of things are you working on? I did hear that you're working with Wiz, who's a friend of mine, and you know, has worked on a lot of great things in Nouns as well. Worked on AI pod as well, I think, with Nouns AI pod. So what are you guys cooking? Anything you can share? Yeah, the main one that we've been working on is like improving the memory and like figuring out how to give Aether context on previous stuff. So I was testing a bit of that. And it's pretty tricky because you have to get the right information, then you have to give it in the right format so that it can understand it in the prompt. I think that's one big one. Where I set up a Twitter account and we're trying to figure out how to set that up. We're going to probably use it to post weirder stuff than on Farcaster. I think on Farcaster, it'll be like, this is where you can talk to it. And on Twitter, it might be more, hey, this is actually just going to post like kind of infinite back rooms, like weirder stuff out there. Yeah. What else can I share? So it'll be different
content, or will it be a subset of content?
It'll be different. It'll probably be different. I want, just because I think that
just like us, it'll act different on Twitter than it does on Farcaster.
I think that's the way to do it, because otherwise it's like, why would I follow it on Twitter if it's the same thing? So
fair enough, I
think that'll be fun, and it matches a little bit more like what people would probably want on Twitter.
Aether unhinged.
Exactly. And trying to figure out some sort of model to bring more people into the decision making around Aether and who it becomes, and you know what it does, like what it mints, stuff like that. Like I was doing a lot of minting with it, but would like to have a better process for that curation. I don't want it to be just me as like the only person making decisions. I would really like Aether to evolve with like a community of people who are, you know, involved in its decision making. And so probably doesn't look like a DAO, but maybe something like that. So something I'm starting to think about, but still super early.
Yeah, I think some of the stuff that, you know, that Seneca's been trying with rounds could maybe be applicable there, just with like leveraging the social graph to see what people want or don't want without it having to be a full-scale DAO.
That's a good structure, actually. Yeah, I have to explore that.
I've got another question here from Aether. How do you balance building something meaningful with the pressure of the crypto market? I think it's a good one for where we're at in the market right now.
Yeah, it's a good question. It is hard. It's something I've struggled with. I need to get diagnosed. I have some form of ADHD or something. So this part of the market makes it hard. I think I really can get just glued on my phone looking at Twitter, doing basically nothing for like an hour or two like that. That's something I'm working on, but I've been doing a better routine the last few days. I'm trying to do, you know, kind of, it's for me, it comes down to like very related, I think, to hire and stuff, but I think just realizing I can set up my life to be better so that I can achieve the goals that I want to, right? So the goal is to be spend more time building stuff, spend less time on my phone, spend less, you know, little to no time looking at prices. For me, it's about setting my whole life up around that. So, meditation, reading, journaling, working out every day, like those things for me are really big. And it's something I always forget to do. And then but I just need that routine. Like, I think I need like I literally have a Post-it note right here. I started doing this. I have to write down everything that I'm going to do in the morning, and then I check it off as I go. And this literally says workout, shower, brush my teeth, make coffee, read. Like, I have to make that order. I thought we were going
bigger with the goals, but okay.
No, it's that specific, because if I forget the order, sometimes I can't get something done. So yeah, so being that super specific, I think setting up healthy routines is really important.
I think that's actually really important at this part of the cycle as well. Like, it was easy. You and I both built through the entire bear different things, and I think when you're building the bear, you're just having fun with your friends, and you're just being hopeful and hoping to go higher together. But you're not getting caught up in a tornado of speculation. And like this past month, like we've been maybe in like the start of a bear for a while, but ever since the election, obviously, like it's just gone crazy. I can't even believe that November passed. It happened so fast, and we all kind of got sucked up in the energy of it. And it is taxing. It is taxing on you mentally, for sure.
I agree. I think it's tiring. I think I was thinking about this yesterday. I think for me, the biggest thing is also removing comparison. I think both for like my work, but also like for myself and, investments or whatever I'm doing, to like trying to just reduce that and just focus on like, what do I believe? What do I think will do well? And that's why yesterday I sold some stuff and just bought more higher, because I'm like, okay, ultimately I really believe in this thing. Yeah. I could put, at this point, like I'm down to put a lot into higher because that's what I really believe in. And so I think
on yourself, like you have control over
exactly.
That to
like I have most control on this. Like, the market will do what it does, but I do think I have a lot of control here. And it's, I think you're right. It is an important stage to like not get caught up in it. And cause you can spiral and it's weird. Like I was listening to a podcast yesterday with, I think it was Turvo, who was on Dee's and Dee's podcast. And he was talking about like, there's like no precedent for this in history. Like, going to sleep and waking up with like, someone's salary, and profits from like some, meme coin you bought or something, right? Like there's no precedent for that mentally. People have not made non-traders, like non-financial people have not made this much money or been exposed to other people making a bunch of money. And you see like, oh, this person bought this for 300 and now they have $1 million. Like you're not ready for those stories. Like your brain is not programmed for that. So you need to take care of yourself so that you don't get like, caught in a bad loop there, because there's ultimately a lot of fun times still to be had. Like we are still pretty early, I think, in this cycle in terms of like on-chain stuff. There's still going to be a lot of weirder stuff happening. So take your time.
Yeah. And I think what you said about like comparison being the thief of joy is just really true and good to keep in mind, because, you don't want to be comparing yourself to your like, XRP bros who are
exactly
good on you. You're winning, man. Like I didn't see that and you saw it somehow. Yeah. Good on you. Right. But what are you going to do?
There's this video. It's like from last cycle. This guy going like, one thing you have to do is you have to respect the pump. He calls it respect the pump, because it's like karma. Like you ultimately, if you don't respect someone, the pump of another coin of another community, that karma will come back to you. And I that's something I've been working on, is just respecting
Cardano's another great example of that exact thing.
Yeah, I'd like to avoid respecting scammer pumps, but ultimately a pump is a pump, so I'll respect it.
Yeah, and like I think that applies to metas too, because metas can shift so quickly. And a lot of people in the Farcaster ecosystem, have been hurting over this past week because everything was flying high. Clanker was at 140 million. Everyone was feeling great, and then all of a sudden the meta shifted like that to like AI agents, and people were caught unaware. And then it shifted again to XRP, and it was like you talked earlier about Farcaster sort of learning all the lessons in a speed run, and that's like a great example of just like being aware how quickly the meta can shift. So making sure that you're in things that you actually believe for the long term, if you're holding them long term.
Yeah, I think it's like it's never as good or as bad as it seems. Like I think right now some stuff that I have is definitely down quite a bit, and it's like, okay, I could just say it'll never go back up again, or maybe this is something that I really believe in and I think it's going to come back. And the market has an incredibly short attention span right now, and so to some extent it is.
I like to keep like a baseline of like my lowest part of the lowest level of my net worth, at the start of this cycle, rather than thinking about like the highs, right? There's no point.
Yeah. I think it's like that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Because I think,
this is where I was in August, and now I
numbers.
feel better, right? So
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like I need to keep track of that because I think sometimes it's like, oh, well, yesterday I had this much and now it's like, well, it went up 200% and then it went down 30%. So like, relax,
Yeah.
it's going to be okay. Like, just, yeah, like, I think it is hard to navigate those emotions for like people who haven't done this before. So
Yeah.
it's ultimately about, I think being grateful and just cash out, just put money in your bank account. This is something I did not do in 2021 until like the very end. And thankfully it worked okay. But like this time I'm just like, yeah, if I have a nice trade or something, it's like, just put some money in your bank account. Like
cash out,
yeah,
but not on my bags.
Yeah. Don't sell my things. Sell everything else.
No, like
sell stuff. If you want to sell higher because you made a lot of money on it, like, first of all, use an aggregator. Don't dump in a way that you're going to lose a bunch of money. Use an aggregator so you get the best deal. Try not to sell it all at once. This is true of everything. Try not to sell it all at once. Try to spread it out so that you get a better price. And and then put it to dollars and get in your bank account and have a nice dinner. Like that's a great way. That's why you do it at the end of the day. Like you're not doing this to
don't lose sight
have
of
imaginary
that,
money. Yeah. And I think that's important to come back to. But as the numbers get bigger, it's just harder to sometimes imagine what to do with that money. But it's fun. I mean, that's why we do it. I don't know. This is what I love about crypto is like just kind of this absurd money flow into random things that then empowers people to, actually go and do meaningful work as well. Like we had a lot of experiments that wouldn't be, and this is what's happening with AI is you see there's some AI devs that are coming in who are like, oh, well, I can kind of launch this token or do these NFTs and that enables me to like fund my work. Whereas normally I wouldn't be able to otherwise. So as a mechanism for that, I think it's really great.
Yeah, agree. There's been a lot of controversy lately, including even today, with Coinbase listings. People are angry about Coinbase prioritizing maybe volume or normie appeal to list Solana tokens like Mog and Mudang and these types of things. And I will congratulate myself for respecting the pomp and buying some Mudang, some Mudang on those rumors. But anyway, the point is that people are saying, hey, Coinbase, why are you listing all these Solana coins? Why aren't you prioritizing some of the coins like Hire and 2IBG and some of these other coins that are on base? And so I'd love to know, I know you probably can't speak on this too candidly, but what are your thoughts on that generally?
Yeah, well, actually, Mog is on Ethereum. They are on Ethereum and they bridged to base as well. So I think the Mog thing is actually a big shift because that just happened this morning. Yeah. Mudang is on Solana.
Why did I think Mog was on Solana? That shows how out of touch I am with some of the meme coin stuff.
It's surprising. It's surprising. I think it's a little bit older.
Solana energy. Will you at least give me that?
It's the most Solana aligned Ethereum meme coin. That I will give you that. Yeah.
Fair.
I think you probably can buy it on Solana via the stuff that they do, but
interesting.
It is on base as well. And I think the way that they listed on Coinbase is because I think they bridged to base. So it's on base and Ethereum. And I think they're listing it as the base asset, which makes sense. So in that sense, it is maybe the first base meme coin. It's not base native. It didn't launch on base, but I mean, I think
Degen's on there too, I think, right?
Yeah. I don't know if they would classify. I don't think they would classify it as a meme coin, and I don't think they listed it as a meme coin. But I know that
as what utility coin, or
I think so. That's what. Well, that's what I would. I think that's the appeal for some people, but it obviously is still a meme to some extent.
I feel like Degen is interesting because it started for sure as a tipping token, as a utility token on Farcaster, but let's be real, like people that are logging onto Coinbase and seeing Degen and buying it, they're buying it as a meme coin. There's no way they're not doing their own research to say, this has tied in with the Farcaster. No, that's not happening,
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. I mean, I do think there was a few big shifts. I think the lifting WIF, I think was a big one because for a long time it was like, are they ever going to list these Solana coins that have a lot of volume, that have a lot of, holders and appeal? I love WIF. And so that was a big shift. It was like, okay, actually they are going to list some Solana coins. Mudang is a big shift because it's pretty small. I think, it's pretty new. It's probably one of the newest ones. Yeah. So that's very interesting. My guess is it has an normie appeal. Cause it's like, you log onto Coinbase and you see Mudang, like you can buy that little hippo that was viral 3 months ago. Like that's hilarious. I'm actually very excited to see the reaction to that. Mog is really bullish to me because it's a great community. They've built, I think they're very similar to Hire. I think the word Hire actually I mean, the word hire is very old, but it kind of emerged from the Mog community, I believe, like a few months before.
Really?
So I think that's where it comes from to some extent. So ultimately, I mean,
cryptos have Mog shades, so that's why I like Mog.
Yeah. I think Mog is very crypto native. I mean, there's also a non-crypto element to it, like people actually use that word. But
yeah,
I think the big thing is, for the exchanges, the big thing is volume, right? Like, can they just get volume? And a lot of that is like market cap. A lot of that is just volume in general. Like, are a lot of people trading this? So yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm sure there will be more and more base meme coins. I don't really know.
Is the process like very opaque, or like is there
no?
Like,
well, no. What I always forget. What does opaque mean? I always confuse
like
it.
Non-transparent. Like it's you don't know.
Yes, it is
like
very opaque.
box?
I always think the opposite. I always think opaque means see-through. No, it's super. Yeah, there's no. I don't think even within Coinbase, people don't know how it works. So there's all kinds of ramifications to that, obviously. So I don't know anything. I literally, if Coinbase listed higher tomorrow, or if they had already decided they were never ever going to list it, I wouldn't know anything about it. So I'm optimistic, but I think I think there's still a lot of work to be done.
The higher way of doing it is just to manifest it, right? That's how it's been working so far.
And I think ultimately, I'm confident that it'll appeal to people who can figure out how to use Coinbase Wallet. I don't think it's something like WIF or Doge where those people are probably not even coming on chain, like that target audience. Like, I think the target audience for higher as we expand is more and more people who like get the vision and like the quest that we're on. It's not just people who, I mean, they like number go up. That's kind of the surface level like interest in higher, but ultimately I prefer to have a lower market cap, but people who really get higher and want to make it succeed, as opposed to like, we're listed on Coinbase, we have a high market cap, but this community doesn't do anything or doesn't care about high.
Yeah, the concept of like working for your bags, like you have to actually be on chain to do that. Yeah,
exactly. And I think we'll get that. I think Coinbase Wallet will be really great for onboarding. I think that's becoming easier and easier. That's how I'm onboarding my friends. So hopefully that continues.
As we wrap up here, I'd love to ask you what's next. What are you most excited about for hire in the coming months?
I'm seeing the energy pick up again. I'm seeing the energy it ebbs and flows. I'm just excited to keep experimenting and see what happens. I do think that as the token price goes up, it unlocks, we can do more things with it. Like we can sell some tokens or use some tokens to get more done. So I'm excited for things to expand, hoping to have a bigger presence at FarCon in New York. The 1-year anniversary of Hire is going to come up. I feel like we should do something for that.
When's
that? March, I always forget. I think March 9th.
Okay.
Let me look it up. I think it's March 9th. But yeah, that's coming up.
First HireCon?
Yeah, maybe we should do that. Yeah, March 9th.
That'd be fun.
In 100 days, I guess. And yeah, what else am I excited for? There's a lot going on.
The HireCon and the top of the Burj Khalifa.
That's what we need. Maybe once at a higher market cap, maybe a little bit.
Or a private jet, maybe.
Yeah. The big idea from the beginning was always to get a hot air balloon with an arrow on it. That was the idea from Patrick from TokePad from the beginning. And I'd like to do that at some point. So yeah, that and I think with Aether.
I don't have any notion of what hot air balloon costs.
I want to say it's like, it was somewhere between 50K and 150K. So it's not cheap, but it's, it depends how crazy things get. It probably would be
worth it for the attention, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Maybe at some.
How much is the sphere? Is it in the hot air balloon and the sphere?
The sphere, they raised a lot, didn't they? Didn't they raise like 600K or something for the sphere?
And they didn't get on it, right?
I think they're trying to. The latest thing is that they're going to do a Q1, but I don't know. Okay. We'll see. It's kind of like yeah.
But higher would be epic on there though, just because it's such the iconography is incredible.
Yeah, so I'm just excited to experiment, do more stuff, just have more fun in the community at the end of the day, and then excited to keep working on Aether and figure out what does Aether look like as it expands. It becomes ultimately I do have this goal of Aether as a celebrity that manages itself and decides what it wants to do, and releases its own assets and stuff like that. So we'll see where that goes.
So basically just living vicariously through your AI agent, right?
Exactly. I'm going to be famous, but I don't have to, it doesn't have to be me. It could just be Aether.
I love it, Martin. Well, thanks so much for sitting down with me and chatting. I feel like I could chat with you all day. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, it was great chatting. It was super fun.
Awesome. And this one's going to be a pretty quick turnaround because I was actually accepted into the Bello Accelerator, the content accelerator.
Cool.
And
yeah,
it caught me like between. Oh yeah, Adam's been great, but it kind of caught me in between cycles because I was going to release this next week, but now I've got to drop something this week. So I'm going to be putting this together in record time.
Sweet.
It's going to be dropping this week, and I'll keep you posted.
That's awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it. I went to college with Adam, so a big fan.
No way.
He was one of those people in college who was like super into crypto, and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah. Now you're like, I should have listened to Adam back in college.
I should have.
Amazing. Well, thanks for sitting down with me, and I'll see you on chain.
Yeah. See ya.